The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great, awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. My name is KJ Alexander. I'm joined once again with Tonya Octave, and we're continuing our deep dive into the Heal Thy Mind book. And today we're going to be continuing the conversation we had last episode regarding spirituality, religion, amongst other various topics. But before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and share the video with a friend who may want to see this information. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos coming out in the future. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off last episode. So Tonya, where would you like to start off with this one?
First, I just want to begin by thanking our audience. We know that we're coming into a new year, 2025, and there's going to be all sorts of emotions in this journey. And so we wanted to thank our audience. January is a time of fresh beginnings, a chance to reflect on where you've been and envision where you want to go and how you want to show up in the world. But as we do this, let's pause for a minute and just embrace something deeper. The quiet strength of humility and this transformative process and power of compassion. These aren't just lofty ideas. They're the threads that weave us closer and closer to each other and to ourselves. And today we'll do some reflections and we'll share some stuff about humility in terms of that. But I invite you to approach this conversation with an open heart because growth begins when we allow ourselves to listen, to care, to be open and receptive to learning and hearing new ideas and thoughts. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'll
Yeah,
go
sure.
ahead and start just by reading the little short paragraph I have on humility in the book, which is on page 32.
All right.
Humility is the state of being modest and humble, of doing, feeling, and being good in the deepest part of who you are in this universe. This is expressed from the heart and not the ego. The ego can make you feel humble just to satisfy the ego. Still, genuine humbleness is a realization that everyone and everything is equally important and no one is better than the other. With humility, you can listen openly, accepting that you may not discover all the answers. You are not there to solve problems for others. You have faith, trust, and belief in yourself. You have boundaries and limitations, bringing awareness and not allowing others to humiliate you, put you down, reject or destroy you, or make you feel less than you are. You are not beating yourself up, putting yourself down, or making yourself feel bad as well. All things are interconnected, and if you criticize, reject, or judge others, you are also criticizing, rejecting, and judging yourself. So, as we begin our discussion about humility, those were some of the thoughts that I noted in the book. What are some of your thoughts about that, KJ?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that was very well written. I think you covered a lot in that section, but I guess my question would be, you talk about the ego and how it kind of cloud your judgment at times. I wonder if you could kind of speak on how someone can go about managing their ego, and let's say a person is in highly ambitious and somebody who wants to be successful in life. Sometimes the ego may help in that regard as far as being ultra competitive and being a high performer. But how does one balance their ego while also trying to strive to be successful and have high performance in a competitive field?
I think that's a great question because one of the questions I get a lot in my practice is how do you control the ego? I
Yeah.
think if you can control anything, you have to get to know it first. So a part of
Mm.
that is spending time with yourself and knowing how you show up with the underlying assumption, and this is like a real assumption, that the ego's present. So if you're getting ready and you're maybe going to go out for the holidays, and as you prepare, maybe like your physical body for that, know that your ego is playing a part in how you're showing up in terms of how you're presenting yourself to the world. If you're going to do a speech, how you prepare for that speech, your ego's going to be there. And I always say, give yourself experiences through life, but understand that your ego is showing up. And so when you're given an experience like you're at the grocery store and someone bumps and gets in front of you. And let's say maybe you're a little bit in a rush, or maybe there's some time constraints. So there's some external factors. How do you show up when that person bumps you and you perceive that experience as being kind of rude? Do you automatically say something? Do you react? Do you push back? Do you kind of just submit and say, okay, go ahead if it seems like it's more important for you to be in front? And without judgment, because even when I say those things, the ego may want to judge, oh, you're not supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this. I say, get to know yourself, get to know how you are going to react in certain situations, because you're getting to know your ego. You're kind of like, developing that intimate relationship. And I've said this before, the ego is the one kind of entity that is been with you at birth and will be with you at death. Not your parents, not your siblings, not other close relationships or partners that you're married to. It's really you. And so we all have that ego within us. And how does it arise? And then there's like three components, because there's also the id and the superego. And the id is really based on basic survival. When I'm hungry, the id may come out a little bit more, especially if you have some things that needed to be worked through in terms of your infancy development. If you feel like you instantly become an Instagram superstar and then everybody is giving you all this fame, then the super ego may be supercharged in a way, and that may manifest itself. And then take notice of those little personality changes when you don't have no money and you're broke and life seems like everything is out to get you, and life is not going in the direction that you want it to go in, and you're like in basic survival mode. You can't pay your electricity. All of these things are happening. Is the id arising? Are you going to this infantile state of being in terms of how you're responding to it? Are you going to go steal? Are you going to go hurt someone else? Are you going to take things that don't belong to you? So understanding that without judgment. And then let's say you have a video out there and the video goes, I forgot what it's called when your
Viral?
video goes viral.
Yeah.
Your video goes viral and everybody else is kind of watching, and now you're getting all of this attention. And so now like this super ego. So then how do you respond? Do you think that you are better than everybody else? Do you belittle people? Do you feel like how is that responding? So a part of understanding the ego is understanding all three parts and how you show up in life. And so life is going to give you experiences. It gives us all experiences. And if you can do this without judgment, then you can kind of get to know your ego in that way and how it's showing up. And I think that's why humility becomes important to that. It makes me think of I did some research in terms of humility for different religious kind of based practices, and one of the things that I looked at was how does Christianity look at humility? And it's really like a central teaching in Christianity philosophy. Humility is about recognizing one's dependence on God and the valuing of others above oneself. And if you feel like Christianity is a part that connects you spiritually, how are you thinking about yourself as a Christian in terms of humility? And there were two scriptures that I came across, and one was, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. And that was James 4:10. And the other one was, do nothing out of selfishness, ambition, or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. And so, you could even think about it if you have a particular frame in terms of a belief, like Christianity, humility is connected to that. That's why I kind of feel that it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I definitely got a lot from that. It sounds like what you're saying is kind of getting to know yourself And also having some level of humility is very key in order to maintain a healthy ego, because it doesn't sound like it's necessarily important to get rid of the ego altogether, but to have a healthy relationship with the ego and yourself, to know that what situations to kind of avoid and how you would act in certain situations, so that you have a healthy relationship with yourself and others. And once you have that knowledge of yourself and how to be, humble and have humility, that should make the process a lot easier going forward in life as you go through certain obstacles and situations you may not know how to get yourself out of.
So you said some very fascinating things, and I'm going to try to apply it to you specifically, so that maybe the listeners can kind of use some of these tools as well that may be
Yeah.
useful. So I know that you love music. You have loved music since you were born. You've always been attracted to it. It's even like in your bloodline in terms of music. Like that has been your passion, and you would do it being paid or not being paid in a variety of forms. And so when you think about when you're creating music, you didn't just wake up one day and created music. There were many steps that you took to get there. Um, some of that may have been knowing that there are different sounds in infancy. So when you heard your mom singing in the morning, that to you may have been an indication of a lovely sound, because food is going to follow, which will soothe you. If you heard sounds of maybe yelling and screaming and that intense in vibration, maybe that in terms brought around movement in your body, because maybe you felt like you had to move in order to get to a different location. So different sounds was absorbed into your body, and you learned that it had this rhythm that flowed with you. Then you said, my body's feeling these vibrations. Can I then make vibrations? And so maybe you started taking silverware and making sounds with silverware, something like that. And then you
Yeah.
learned that you then had this creative energy. And then maybe it became pots and pans. And then maybe you're at a park and you're bored and you pick up a rock and you're like, what do I do with the rock? And maybe you rub rocks together and you learn sounds and vibrations and you're like, oh, now I can do it. And then as language starts to develop, then you start putting language to the experience. It's like, oh, how can I make this word go with this word and flow in some way? And then you add the music and the vibration to the words. And then now you learn how to create stories. And with that stories gives an image. And so it wasn't that you just woke up one day and say, I love music. There was a path that got you there. There's a path to the ego that gets you there. And once you feel like you've become a master in music and you got it all, which we really don't, even if we look at some of it, musicians are always creating new or even stepping out of their genre and going to other genres, right? And so there's always this new creation. You had said, so the idea is like to get to know the ego. I even take it a step further. You get to know yourself as a musician and all the different things that you can do with that. And when it comes to the ego in spiritual realms can hold us back. So yes, you do go along that path to getting to know it, but you don't stop it once you've mastered the ego, because
Mm.
now you got to get a doctorate. And the doctorate is learning how to destroy the ego, because living a life where you no longer need the ego can send a different experience through the body, the mind, and the spirit. And when I say getting rid of the ego, means that you can say, bye, ego, I don't no longer need you.
Mm.
Because the ego is there to keep you in balance. That means you've learned the skills to stay in balance in this life at now, where we're not talking nowhere else, in the present moment in 2025. You learned yourself how to stay in balance, and the ego doesn't need to show up because there are no triggers.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, definitely very powerful what you just said there. I guess a follow up to that, I would ask, when you say destroy the ego, I wonder if you can kind of detail what that looks like. So, like, do you mean someone who has a lot of material possessions, or like a lot of flashy things? Does that mean to just like live like a monk and just give up all of that and just wear one robe cloth all your life? Or does it, what does that exactly look like, and like what do you expect a modern person to do when you say destroy the ego?
That's an excellent question. I'm not even sure I'm qualified to answer that question
Okay.
because you're asking like, because my vision went to like monks, right?
Yeah,
Like, are people who are isolated and live in places, and how can you really not live without an ego and live in the modern world, as you said?
exactly.
I
Yeah.
would think of like, how can you be a musician and not need music? It is embodied within you, and no matter
Yeah.
what, it is your being. So the ego may be silent. And once again, I'm not as qualified to say kind of like perception, but on the path there, I would say like the ego is embodied and it no longer needs to show up because you got it. There aren't triggers. You aren't reacting. You're responding in the world, but you're not reacting to situations. If someone
Mm.
calls you with bad news, you're not reacting, but you're responding. Like you can grieve. Emotions are important. So it's important to express our emotions, and not that emotions can be ego driven, but emotions also can exist with us in terms of our ego not needing to be present in the activation of the ego. So
Mm.
I'm not as qualified to kind of respond how you would how that would look for someone, because I'm on my journey too. And my journey is to try to figure out what would it be like to live in this modern world in 2025 and moving forward without the ego being activated as much. What I've learned though is things that have triggered me in the past, one, they don't trigger me. Things that have triggered me in the past, I'm able to respond in a way and see things differently. And sometimes that's not responding because I feel it is the total embodiment. It's like, how can you be music if I took away instruments, I took away language, I took away hearing? I took away all your senses, the sensations of vibrations against your skin. I took away the sound. You couldn't see it. You couldn't read it. You couldn't even like sense it. If I took away your senses, how could you still be a great musician? That would be the
Mm.
embodiment of it, right?
Okay.
I don't know how you get there. I know that there's some strategies in terms of triggering and not being triggering and working through things like that. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, no, very interesting. It sounds like the real growth happens internally. So there's no way you can really see on a person, what stage they are in their ego development, but a person can internally tell, and you can kind of see it based on how they react to certain situations and how they feel on the inside. Really, that's how you can see the development and the growth of the ego. And I think it's interesting how you say, taking away senses from people, how would they still kind of go in the direction of what they feel, who they feel they are. And there are some examples of people, you have, Stevie Wonders and people like that, and people
Hmm.
throughout history who haven't had all their senses but still been able to be, successful in a music genre. But I think it comes down to basically you are who you are. And I think the part of life where a person grows and develops an ego, I think is very important. And I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be an easy path. I think there's supposed to be ups and downs when dealing with your ego and the id. And as a person, we go through ups and downs in life too. So I think it really comes down to just a person. People need to spend time with themselves and get to know themselves and understand that when they get put in certain situations, they don't need to do the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe take a time to just reflect and kind of
Hmm.
analyze, be more analytical in your approach. And
Hmm.
that way you kind of get to get to kind of circumnavigate the ego. That way you're not a servant of the ego. The ego can be a servant to you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It kind of makes me think of some Buddhism and the perspective
Okay.
on humility. Humility is integral to the Eightfold Path and is seen as essential for reducing ego and attaining enlightenment. So, in terms of Buddhist practices, there really is this kind of like unfolding that happens in terms of, like you said, like you control the ego doesn't control you. And when I was doing research, one of my readings said, Buddha taught that arrogance leads to suffering, while humility fosters compassion and inner peace. Do not be proud of your virtues. Do not speak of what you have done or can do. Remain quiet and humble. And that's like what you just said, maybe taking some silence before going into that reactive space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of go back on something you said earlier, um, I think people should definitely practice humility more. I feel like that's one thing that there isn't really a lot of these days, especially, with the advent of social media. A person can have, it doesn't even take a lot, a few thousand followers, and start to feel like they may be better than the next person. So, and that's a reality we haven't really seen in society up until recently. So I wonder if you can kind of speak to like how the average person who may, grow a following or may grow some type of success in life, how do they maintain humility while also achieve success at the same time?
I guess the question would be, what is your definition of success?
Hmm. Yeah, it's
And if
different for
your
everybody.
definition, yeah, if your definition of success is to have over 10,000 followers so that you could build your brand and your brand promotes something, that may be part of how the super ego is going to be supercharged in
Hmm.
that, because you might do things that are going to be a little bit against this humble way of being. You know, like if you think about it, and the other day we were kind of we were talking about Jesus the other day in our private conversation. But I think, Jesus's life exemplifies humility, particularly in his acts of service and sacrifice, such as, he washed his disciplined feet. And so when you think about social media, whose feet are you washing as you're trying to build this brand? And if you are doing it for people in the community where you feel like this could be, like, would Jesus do that? Would you ask yourself that? Even if you're not Christian, we know a little bit about, in terms of his story, because we have a world that is more kind of like Christian and Catholic based.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about a following, there are some ways that you can stay grounded in terms of that, but you may have to acknowledge that it may not get you the 10,000 followers, because the 10,000 followers are in the mainstream and that's what they're going to be attracted to. The people who want to develop humility and in terms of like doing selfless service and those things, those aren't the people written
Mm.
about in the news. Those aren't the
Yeah,
shocking
not always.
stories that come
Yeah,
up. Not always.
yeah,
Once in a while, you may hear things like that. And so I think
yeah,
that would, you know,
yeah, and that's the thing too. Being humble is not really a super popular thing. I mean, there is an artist Kendrick Lamar came out with this song called "Be Humble" a few years ago, and
mhm.
it was a hit, but it wasn't like the biggest hit in the world. But nonetheless, every now and then you have certain artists and certain public figures push that narrative to be humble and have humility. But it's not really the popular thing to say or do. So, but I think it should definitely be more popular, because you look at the other side of it, people who are arrogant and egotistical, they may have a little success for a while, but those people don't tend to last too long, I noticed. And I
Yeah.
wonder if you can kind of speak to that. Why do you think that people who have people who have pursuits in life, if they approach things from an egotistical perspective and an arrogant perspective, why do they usually, why does it usually fall short, and why is it not, able to last long compared to someone who is humble?
Well, I think we as a society are responsible for that. People are popular because we have gone in that direction. People are voted into office. People have high selling record deals. People are famous and popular in the entertainment industry because we have allowed it as a society to be okay. And so
Mm,
we have to look at ourselves. Um, like when all this stuff, came out in terms of like R. Kelly and the Netflix series and stuff like that, and people kind of being shocked about some of the human trafficking things that came out with him, we as a society supported that. He was a musician and we supported his music. We contributed financially to it. So we can't just close our eyes and say it's just him. He's the bad person. We condoned it and supported it for many, many years. And so I think that we have to take responsibility as a society.
mm.
um,
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
Catholicism, one of the perspectives is humility is viewed as a cornerstone of virtue, closely tied to recognizing God's greatness and one's own limitations. So if you were to look at that, maybe we should say, like, maybe we are limited, but it doesn't take away the accountability of where we're spending our energy and who we are promoting and supporting. Um, if you even were to go to your bank account and look at all of the money that you've spent in December, think about the money that you spent in December and what was it supporting? That's what you
Mm.
are contributing to in our society. And we can't get mad if bad things come from that, or we start hearing things in terms of stories of how people show up. But we supported them in some way.
Yeah,
What do you think about
absolutely.
that? Because it
No,
involves the
it's
entertainment industry, which influences a lot of the things that we see and hear and how we shape our worldview.
no, definitely a lot of truth to that. And what it sounds like you're saying is ultimately the power is always going to be within the people, within the masses of people. So whatever the
Hmm.
masses of people decide they want at any given time in a society, usually that's what, the media and the world kind of helps promote, because that's what people want. So I think that it's more important that people start to understand, these concepts we just been talking about in this video, humility and having control over the ego. But these discussions need to happen more on a mass scale. That way that
Hmm.
more people can understand the importance of it. That way, if it does become popular, we'll actually get to see these themes and these ideas get pushed more than they have been in the past. So I think that really is a key.
And
And
I think could this even be possible? Like, we're talking like something that is less than a percentage of happening in the
yeah,
current world, the way that we are, and the direction, the way that the world is moving.
yeah.
Could this even be possible? And I have to say, because I study some ancient civilizations, we have to go back to ancient civilizations before a lot of corruption started. And one of the societies that I study is ancient Egyptian civilizations. And I looked up some in terms of ways they understood humility. And one of the things is I got a quote from a book called The Serpent Power. The Serpent Power is somewhat equivalent to what we know of now as like chakras. But the
Mm.
ancient practice is the serpent power, the ancient Egyptian mystical wisdom of enlightening and life forces. And what it says is aspirant, which is an individual who is wanting this, that there's a desire. An aspirant should learn humility and patience while gaining purity of heart. And then another quote that was taken from Egyptian Mysteries, the Dictionary of Gods and Goddesses. Divine love allows the pretentiousness, pride, hubris, and narcissism of the personality to be broken down into humility and purity of the heart, leading to bright intellect and a virtuous personality that will develop clear vision and a higher self. So back then we had a foundation, purifying the heart. Our bodies weren't as toxic. Our minds weren't as cluttered. And so the more connected to spirit we were, the more we lived in a society where we're talking about those same values. Now we're kind of living in a society where there's a lot more corruption going on, and it feeds it. Because now the ego feels you've taken something away. If I give you a car and I say, well, now you can't drive because you're in trouble, and I take it away, the ego doesn't like that because they feel that you've lost something. And so now in society, we feel things are taken away. If our phones, our internet, if those things, all our attachments, if those things are taken away, see how the ego becomes involved, because now it feels like we have taken them away. So a part of achieving that I control my ego doesn't control me, is rethinking what your relationship is with attachments in that world. Attachments in relationships, attachments to material things, attachments to ideas and concepts. That's why when I started, can we have some flexibility in terms of how we're going to have this conversation? Because I may introduce some ideas that aren't always as accepted in this current modern world that we live in.
Yes, absolutely. Very powerful message. And I think we were able to get a lot of information across in this episode. Before we wrap up, anything you wanted to add before we close?
There's a little short, I wanted to give kind of a practice that you can do to really kind of work on this idea of connecting or reconnecting with humility.
Okay.
And so the first step would be to kind of find a quiet space that you can get into. That might be at home or in your car, something you want, something where you can just be quiet for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then have a notebook or a journal of some sort, and maybe a special pen that you use and that you dedicate for that. And then reflect on your day. So just start writing down to reflect on your day, not trying to judge it, just reflect on it. And as you reflect, there are 3 questions that you can kind of ponder. What is one moment today when I recognized that I didn't have all the answers and needed help? So as you go throughout your day, just kind of like in your reflection, when did I not have the answers? Or I needed help for something? And then a second question is, how did I respect or show kindness to someone else today? How did I get gratitude? How did I offer help? How did I listen without interrupting? And then a third question is, what is one thing I am grateful for that someone else contributed to my day? And I'll speak about this because I felt that this was the most moving experience that I had. So I'm doing a 21 day challenge based on a Kemetic diet system, which is traditionally a raw vegan diet. Not necessarily a difficult thing for me to do at this stage, but I wanted to go to a vegan restaurant because they were having something. So I wanted to celebrate this vegan restaurant that is in Las Vegas called Tarantino's. I'm definitely going to put their name out there. And when I called to order, essentially I was going to order some zucchini rolls. And when the lady answered, I said, everything that I order, I want to make for sure that it's gluten free. She says, yes. And she's so excited. We have so many gluten free items. And I'm like, whoa. I've been to this restaurant. I was like, okay, cool. But as she's describing them, the adjectives that she's using her sales pitch was amazing. And as I was listening to her, I have never called a place and ordered food and got that type of enthusiasm,
Mm.
supportiveness, and time. She literally was spending 20 minutes going over each of the items and
Oh,
how
wow.
they're zucchini free with the different herbs that are used in it. She gave me history on the chef and everything in this phone call. And I was like, wow. And then she had mentioned some cheesecakes, and I was like, Tanya, cheesecakes really aren't, on the raw vegan diet, although they're kind of
Yeah.
vegan. You've had them, but then I get there, and they have a raw vegan brownie, and so I get it because the way that she describes it, and the compassion she had for the sensitivities and how she expressed it, I just felt so wonderful. And I was just thinking, guys, she has a great sales pitch. Like, she's got me buying everything in this restaurant. And when I went out, I actually didn't even eat a lot of it. I gave it to somebody who needed some food. But I was just like, how, if we could treat people like that in the world and move towards that direction. She left me with some kindness in my heart and compassion because I shared the food with somebody else that I knew needed some food to eat. Right? Like,
Yeah.
how come we can't trickle down in that way? And I just say, so like that would be something in terms of my reflection on a beautiful experience that I had in terms of typically when I go to restaurants and I eat out, I do not get that at all. I get the side looks like, really? Like, why are you even eating out? You have too many allergies or food allergies, things like that. It's never welcoming. And if
Yeah.
we can welcome people into this world with all their stuff, that's a beautiful place to be because I felt beautiful in that moment. She made me feel beautiful. And I just think that that was great.
Yeah, that's a very, very powerful. I'm glad you shared that. It sounds like, when you actually believe in what you're selling and you can, stand behind it, that gives you a different energy. That helps you, promote the product with
Mhm.
a different energy and vibe that you may not have if you're selling something you may feel is not as healthy or nutritional. But, I
Mhm.
think that's a very interesting take. I definitely appreciate you sharing that. So, with that being said, that is all the time we have for today. We're going to go ahead and
I
wrap up.
wanted to conclude. I wanted
Okay.
to conclude with an intention
All right.
that tomorrow, okay, the intention is tomorrow I will focus on and then maybe have a specific thing, a specific act of humility. So tomorrow I will focus on sharing food with others and then admitting when I don't know something and being kinder with my words. So coming up maybe with an intention that is specific to humility that can be a way that you use as your motto throughout the day. And then before we end, I wrote a poem on what humility means to me. And what we can do is we can end this now, and then you'll still be able to listen to the poem after. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure. So, we'll put the poem right after this so people can check that out. But I want to thank everyone for tuning into today's episode. Make sure if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That is all the time we have for today. Until next time, everyone, be safe and bye bye.
What humility means to me. I walk like the Nile through the sands of time, flowing with stories in rhythm and rhyme. My roots are two rivers, one dark, one green, a tapestry woven, a bridge between. The pyramids whisper of strength long past, but teach me to cherish the shadows cast. Humility rises like the morning sun, a journey of many, yet walked by one. As a child, my heart was a trembling dove, reacting to chaos in search of love. The fawn response became my shield, a tender soul in a battlefield field. In my teens, I was labeled and misunderstood, searching for self in a world that never could. The echoes of judgment shape my stride, yet in my pain a quiet strength would abide. In my 20s, suffering burdened its flame, falling in and out of love with shame. The weight of struggles within and out left me questioning life and filled with doubt. In my 30s, I set my own needs aside to raise my children with love as my guide. A blended family, a fragile yet precious weave, brought both joy and trials that made me grieve. The strain wore heavy on my health and soul. Adrenals stretched thin, the cracks took their toll. But humility whispered, reconnect your body, your mind, your spirit within. And now in my 40s, I stand in the light, each scar a map of my soul's flight, acknowledging pain, yet cherishing grace, reconnecting with the divine in this sacred space. Humility has taught me to trust, to release, to walk this path with a newfound peace. It whispers there's more to learn and grow, a life of wonder in the ebb and flow. So I journey on with my head held low, like the Nile. I give as I gently flow. For humility lives in the space between the seen and unseen, the known and the dream. Thank you.
We hope that you have found today's episode insightful and helpful on your wellness journey. If you have enjoyed the episode, please share with others. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It lets us know that all the work that we're doing is meaningful to you, and we'll continue to share simple techniques to help you move towards wellness, happiness, and success. Remember, this podcast is part of a bigger plan, building towards affordable group sessions and annual retreats, and we'd love to have you join us as we grow this movement. I will leave you with this thought. The body wants to heal. Get the mind out of the way. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.